This is going to be a complete map walkthrough of climbing Gannett Peak from Titcomb Basin. I'm going to give you a turn-by-turn, trail, mile-by-mile assessment and guide of how this worked out for us and tips for yourself when you do this so you can not make some mistakes that cost us a few hours for sure on summit day like us. First of all, we started here at the Elkhart Pine Creek Trailhead. I was very surprised, first of all, at how many folks were here on I think it was a Friday that we got there. It was packed for Wyoming. It looked like a Yellowstone parking lot. There was tons of parking there, so I don't think you have to really worry about not getting a spot, but just something to be aware of. This trail to Titcomb Basin starts off and it's super flat. This is the GPX route that we were following here. Very, very flat, very chill. I think you end up with around 2,500 feet of elevation by the time you end up getting to your first base camp. I was in and out of using my poles this first few miles. Then it starts getting a little steeper and stuff once you get around, not Barber Lake, but once you get to around Seneca Lake, and definitely I think this is Island Lake. So around in here, it'll start getting a little more dippy up and downs. Nothing that's unmanageable by any means, but it is just something to think about when you're going. Now, the one thing that you have to be aware of is that no matter what the weather says, it's probably going to rain and thunderstorm in the winds. We got there at the trailhead at 9 o'clock a.m. because we had to drive from Laramie, so it was a 5-hour drive. We left at 4 o'clock. So we started at about 9 a.m., which is way too late for the winds, but we really couldn't do anything about that besides getting there the day before, camping and whatever. So I would recommend starting at least at 7 o'clock at the latest, and you will probably get to the place that you actually want to get to, because as my story will say here in a second, you'll see what happened to us. So essentially where you want to get to is there's two different lakes, main lakes here in this basin. This is the Titcomb Basin. And the one thing with the lakes is you definitely want to try and get as far down into the second lake as you can. Now the reason is because what happened to us. So we came in around in here and it started clouding up, and then it just started thunderstorming and raining super hard. Now we did not get to really the second lake. We camped around in here, and that was just because we got stopped by a freaking storm. And one of the things what that ended up doing for us was it made the summit day more challenging. First of all, it extended the summit day by about almost 2 miles. I would say at least a mile, 1.75 miles, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're already doing a mentally long, challenging day, especially you have to be cognizant of where the storms are coming, beating storms. It made a difference. And so we camped here, and then what that ended up making us doing was hiking around this lake, and actually let me even say I would camp up in here if you can. And the reason is because when we were going through this, obviously we started at 3 o'clock, so everything was dark, and we totally got not lost, but we meandered more than we should have in this spot here. Now, if that was the case, if you had been coming in earlier, or if you had camped there, if we had camped there, god dang, if we had camped there earlier in the afternoon, we got that far, we would have seen this trail, but it is a faint trail through here. And that was a problem just because of the fact that in the morning we were getting confused where it was. We were dropping down to the lake. We didn't realize there was so much water around here that we would go down to water sources to get it. And it just wasn't, it was a time suck was what it was. So getting and camping as close past this lake as you can, there's copious amounts of water throughout this entire area here too. Like, you do not have to worry about water really for a lot of this climb until we'll talk a little bit about it later, but you really don't have to worry about too much water on this climb because there's a lot of water. Hard to see in the morning and in the dark. Now, the next phase of this is to get up and over Bonnie Pass. Now, when you see Bonnie Pass from Island Lake, which, by the way, Island Lake that I talked about, that's a really good spot to take pictures. Really wouldn't do a lot of picture taking until you get to Island Lake, wasting time, at least for me. But when you see Bonnie Pass from Island Lake, you think, holy cow, that thing, I don't think that thing is going to even go. We have to get up over that before Gannett. And the thing I've learned, and I've talked about this in previous podcasts, is that you really just don't know until you go. And yes, it was steep, but it wasn't as treacherous as we thought. So basically, once we got into, but the one thing that I would say about this, though, is that it is riddled with talus. And so basically everything after this lake is going to be very slow going, okay? And you got to take that into account for summit day. It's only, I think, 5.5 miles or something like that, especially if you get to that basin here. But this is going to take a long time because this is not a manicured trail. This is you picking your way. You have to navigate. You kind of have to route find. And then once you get to this top third of Bonnie Pass, it becomes snow. And especially early in the morning, this is going to be very slick. I actually fell because I didn't put my crampons on. I actually fell and I had to whip it. And I stuck it straight into the ground, and it stopped me from sliding. It's something to be aware of. There is also a way, though, to get around, because typically the snow will occur. It was right in here for us. We actually, on the way down, took kind of more of a scree path on the way down. So there is a path, if they're comfortable on snow, that you could probably totally take up. Again, that was a little bit more challenging because we were doing that in the dark, so it took us a long time. By the time we got about to the saddle here, we were in sunrise territory. So we could see now Gannett from here. And you're looking at it and you're like, how the F do you actually get up that thing, right? And it's pretty self-explanatory. You really just are going to come down Bonnie Pass, which takes a little bit longer than you would think. So you come down here. And now you see from this GPX track, so you cross some glaciers. We did not rope up for this glacier. And in fact, we didn't rope up for the entire thing, which, get me in the comments for that if you want, but we didn't feel like we needed to rope up. There was no reason to. We didn't see any open crevasses. We didn't see any snow bridges. And yes, they could have been under the snow, but the month that we did it, it was very, very unlikely. As you see as a path, the GPS track that we were following, for whatever reason, now goes up this area of the glacier here and then around. This wasted so much time for us. Would not recommend this path at all. What I would recommend is going up this gully from this looks like the Glacier Peak Trail. I do not know why this GPX route was like that. I guess this gully is loose, but this right here was pure ice for us. And now we were rocking trail runners and crampons and a whippet. We were trying to go as light as possible. And going up this ice was a little bit hairy, number one. But then not only that, but then now you have to pick your way through rocks again to come up here and then go back right to go to the trail that you were on. I just didn't understand why the track was like that. We didn't take this way on the way down by any means because it was just, we thought it was kind of stupid. What I would recommend is going straight up this loose dirt gully and then taking a left. We probably wasted about 45 minutes switching crampons off and then going back and then putting them back. It was just not a good thing. We'd go up, this loose gully instead. Now we get up onto this kind of the gooseneck glacier. I don't even know if that's what it's called, but basically the gooseneck here. And it looks like you can go over this way. We actually did a ridge scramble up. I think this was snow, but we did a ridge scramble actually up this area here. And we actually bypassed the snow, so we didn't have to transition the crampons and all of that type of stuff again. And then we came up here and we got to cross the glacier here, and then this was snow covered. This was I believe the gooseneck pinnacle is around right here. This, unfortunately, what we were doing is us following my buddy. We were going actually this way, and this was steep. and there was definitely a bergschrund here. This was the wrong way. We actually had to come back this way. Obviously, we were looking at our track and do a very moderate snow climb. Again, we did this in trail runners and universal crampons, and we did it with a whippet, and I was comfortable with it. He was comfortable with it. He's a mountain guide, but I think we also have been around snow quite a bit, definitely, and glaciers in the North Cascades, where we were originally from, and did a lot of mountain climbing. So for us, it was fine. For other people, it might be quite scary, but it was a good climb up the pinnacle here. Nothing too scary that I thought. Now you get up here and you transition again off of your crampons, at least we did, and now we're doing a very class 2 ridge scramble. And so now we eventually get to the ridge scramble proper. And I would say, in my opinion, this was the sketchiest part of the entire climb, was this ridge scramble. You have some class 3 climbing, you could maybe do some class 4 moves, and then once you get to the actual ridge proper, there you have 2 no-fall zones on both sides. Now, it's quite wide in between both of those no-fall zones, so it's not like you would be, or at least I didn't deem it as something that would be extremely, I guess, sketchy or dangerous, but for somebody that's not used to exposure, I could definitely see this being very scary. I kind of elected to take mostly rock ridge. I did not put my crampons back on for this. There was a guided team that was traversing this slope here in crampons and with a rope team. In my opinion, I don't know, doesn't seem like a good idea to me, but what do I know? I'm just an influencer online. But the way I assessed it was this was very steep. It doesn't look steep with these topo lines here, but it was very steep. It's definitely a no-fall zone that I'd say. And especially if you're on a rope team, somebody goes down, it's going to be hard to arrest, with all those people. That was just my opinion. So I just stayed on the ridge scramble here, and you have to bounce around to the snow a couple times. Just really be careful. Then finally you get to Gannett Peak. Okay, now here's where the fun begins, because now this is where the mentally draining part of this comes back in, because now you are at Gannett Peak, you're looking and you see Bonnie Pass that you have to go back up again. Yes, not only do you have to go down, but you have to go back up the pass, and then you see the lake that your camp is at, and it looks, I was on 9x zoom on my phone, which probably isn't a good thing, and I couldn't see camp. This is where the work starts, in my opinion. You have to traverse your whole way back. I actually thought the ridge was a lot less scary on the way back for whatever reason. Go back down the gooseneck. We actually, for us, we didn't even wear crampons. We actually did not wear crampons at all on the way back. The snow was so soft, and the whippet was fine because I could jam it all the way down into the snow. I didn't have my snow baskets on. I used that as an anchor and felt good going down. Now you get all the way down. For us, again, instead of going this way, we went down this steep gully. And yes, it's steep, but if you have trekking poles, not a problem. Now, one thing I would recommend too, by the way, is while we're on this glacier peak trail, or the glacier trail, this is an alternative route in. And I would say if you are not as conditioned, I think that this is a better route, honestly, even though it's 10 miles longer or something total round trip. The reason I think that is because your summit day for Gannett from Bonnie Pass it's a long day. It took us 13 and a half hours. Again, we camped a little bit lower than we should have, but it was a long, stressful day because the whole day you're stressed about your navigation, you're stressed about the glaciers, but then you're also stressed about beating storms. Whereas if you were camped, I think a lot of people on the glacier trail will just simply camp down in this basin. One, you can just get up, Gannett, and then you know the whole way you have down. You don't have to climb up another pass, and it's going to be a way shorter summit day, as opposed to Bonnie Pass, where now you have to go across the glacier again, which again we elected not to wear crampons on that one, and it was totally fine. But now you have to go back up Bonnie Pass, and now you're seeing storms roll in. We're headed up here at about 1:30 p.m., which is too late for the Rockies. And at about 2:30, we get hit with a storm. And so at about The middle third of here, there was some rock caves, which were really nice to get under, but we weathered a storm underneath those, lightning all around. Finally get back and up over Bonnie Pass. Right here, I am having a heck of a time. It's just, how the heck do I put it? I was Walking Dead. I was a zombie. I was not feeling good. I was basically death marching by the time I got up to the top of Bonnie Pass. Now you got to go back down Bonnie Pass, which is kind of cool because you can do some glissades. I'm not a big glissader. I don't want to take a rock up my butt. And so I was just kind of ski glissading some of this. Same with my partner. Now you get down now, because we had to go all the way down here. Now you can see how clear this actual trail was. And we actually got through this way faster on the way back down and then could see the trail back to our camp. It was a long day. Like I said, it was 13 and a half hours. We were toasted at the end of that. My partner, who's a mountain guide in the North Cascades, he said that was one of the hardest summit days he's ever had, and he's got 20 years of experience. So know what you're getting yourself into at Bonnie Pass. Like I said, it would have been a little bit easier if we would have camped further in the basin. Really wish we would have done that. The next day, you have the long hike out, which goes fairly quickly. You're going to be surprised. There's quite a bit of ups and downs there. And for the first part, anyway, because you're like, God, I thought I got to go downhill with this. But not really the case until you get past Seneca Lake, and then it becomes real cruisy. We were out of there pretty early in the day, or at least in the early afternoon, actually earlier than we thought. That was good. If you guys have any questions about Gannett Peak, leave them down below. I'll try to answer them as best as I can. And watch out for a documentary that I'm going to create on this, and then tons of more content as well. Subscribe to the channel so you can see that whole playlist. This is just the first video in a series of videos about Gannett Peak. Thanks, guys.